Hello and welcome to this episode of Tradecraft Security Weekly. I'm your host, Beau Bullock, and this week I have joined with me Ralph May. What's up, Ralph?
Hey, what's going on?
You may know Ralph from our other podcast we do, the CoinSec podcast. It's tough not to say welcome to the CoinSec podcast when we're doing the Tradecraft Security Weekly now. But so this is episode number 29, and this week Ralph is actually going to be demoing the Evilginx2 framework to perform man-in-the-middle attacks for us. So Ralph, feel free to take it away, sir.
All right, awesome. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys about Evilginx2. For guys who have not used it, it's a man-in-the-middle attack framework for essentially big goal here is bypassing two-factor. Evilginx has been out for a little bit, and then it actually came out with the second version just recently, and I've been using it on some engagements, and it's a pretty powerful tool. There's a couple other ones out there too, but we'll kind of get into it. So yeah, it's an attack framework. It's really where that name comes from, Evilginx. It's actually based off initial work that people were doing with Nginx. So essentially what they were doing is they were, trying to use Nginx as a proxy to do man-in-the-middle traffic for websites. And this is kind of what that sprang from. The first version actually used Nginx configuration files, and this new version drops it all entirely. So in version 2, it's all written in Golang, which I have a personal love for. The big reason why is it compiles to machine and it'll run on all the platforms, OS X, Windows, Linux, whatever you got.
Hey, quick question, Ralph. In terms of the man-in-the-middle aspect of this, we're primarily talking about HTTP traffic man-in-the-middleing here.
Yes, specifically. So
for the network traffic, just in general.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Nginx is a web server, pretty much. And it's actually gained a lot of popularity for doing, kind of man-in-the-middle type functions. One particular example of that is actually Cloudflare uses Nginx for all of the proxying of their traffic for websites. So yeah, specifically we are looking to attack HTTP traffic, right? Okay. Man-in-the-middle, that particular kind of traffic. So kind of what makes this great off of the first version, which actually, full disclosure, never used the first version, but the second version is pretty customizable. So there's something called fishlets, which allow us to kind of mold this framework without having to rewrite the entire code, which is really cool. So, depending on what site you want to fake, you can just write a fishlet for it. One of its primary purposes here is not necessarily to capture credentials, which it does do. Its really primary purpose is to bypass two-factor. A lot of organizations have moved to two-factor. I write it up in reports all the time. That's a recommendation if they don't have two-factor to implement it across the perimeter. And this is a tool to circumvent those security controls. So the big thing that it will capture, the big output is login data, so username and password. And then session data, so those session cookies are really what we're looking for at the end here to bypass two-factor. So kind of how does it work, right? So this is pretty simplistic drawing here. Well, we have our victim who's going to be visiting a site. Let's say that site is, site.badsite.com, right? And that site will be running on the Evilginx server, wherever you're setting that up at. And Evilginx is going to do 3 primary things for us. It's going to be the web server to host that site. It's also going to be DNS resolution. So Evilginx has a DNS server built into it, so it can do the resolve right there. And then it's also going to be your SSL certificate. So your bad site will show a valid SSL cert using Let's Encrypt. Evilginx is going to talk to your real site, which would be the target website that you're trying to emulate. And what it's going to do is it's going to present the victim an identical copy of the real site. When I say identical, I mean it's literally visiting the site in real time, presenting all of that data to the victim, and then capturing any information in between that we deem important. And those 2 big things that we care about are login data, right? So username, password, and then session cookies. So that's kind of like a quick high level of how it works and kind of what we're trying to accomplish here. So how might the full attack chain look? So the attack chain would be something, it could be different than this, but this is like a traditional attack chain. So we're going to send an email, a phishing email with a link of some sort, enticing our our user to click on this link, saying change the password. I mean, that really comes down to the SE portion of the fish there. It could be anything, but that link is going to actually be for our Evilginx site. Hopefully we have we had bought a domain name that's similar to the real site, and Evilginx will be proxying that traffic to the real site. So the user will click on the link, think they're going to the real site because it will look identical to the real site. And we're going to capture that data. Once we've captured that login data and session cookie, we can go ahead as the attacker and go to the real site and access their session that they just opened up. Even though they may be using HMAC and all the other fun stuff, once you have that session cookie, you're pretty much good to go.
So
right?
Evilginx isn't actually like creating a clone of the site on the web server. Nope. It's just proxying all the traffic through.
Yes, it's not creating a clone. That is correct. It is proxying the traffic in real time.
Wow, that's awesome.
So the benefit of that is that Evilginx may not know specifically what kind of two-factor you have implemented, and it doesn't really care. What it cares about is the specific session cookie that we deem as important to validate that the session has been established and that all factors have been completed. So in a in a real sense, you could have 50 factors, and after you've completed all 50, Evilginx is going to get that session cookie. You're good to go. So having more factors is not going to increase the security of your site when a user's gone to a different domain. So, all right, so tool time. Let's get into it.
All right.
All right, so we have got a lot to talk about here. So I am going to demo Okta. For those who don't know, Evilginx has got a bunch of fishlets already made, and there are things like Facebook, LinkedIn, a bunch of other sites that are like common social media sites and stuff like that that you can fish people for, right? What we tend to see on our engagements is organizations that have SSO or third-party SSO sites. One of those sites is Okta. There's other ones out there like Ping and many others, SSO portals. And so what we're looking to do is fish a target user and be able to gain access. So to do that, I had to build what they call a fishlet. Okay. Now, a fishlet is essentially kind of the framework for how Evilginx should proxy traffic, right? So at the top, you get your name, your author, and your minimum version. But in here, we have a proxy host. So the fish sub is Okta, right? That means that that's Okta dot whatever Okta is the first subdomain, right?
Okay.
So that's a subdomain that we're going to be pretending to be. So
sure.
It would be okta.myfakedomain.com, right?
Okay.
The original domain would be whatever you want. So I have Pond Company here. Yeah, but it would be my fake domain. Or no, this is the original. This is the real site you're trying to emulate, right? Mm-hmm. So in Okta's world, and actually this is not the right one because we're not going to use Pond Company. That's just a different domain that I had in here. We're going to use the Dark Cloud, which is just another domain that I own. Anyways, so this is going to be the original domain. So when you sign up for Okta, right, and your company gets a site, it's going to be your company name.okta.com, right? Mm-hmm. This is the real site. Now, what I'm saying over here is that when you visit the fishlet subdomain of Okta, right, I want you to proxy traffic to, in this case, it's going to be the dark cloud and then domain okta.com. We'll specify session true, meaning I want to capture session data, and is the landing, and that means is the first page is true. We have some subfilters down here. The subfilters specify how I want to parse through the data in those requests and remove the original domain and replace it with my fish domain, essentially so that the data that the user receives gets presented properly and there isn't any references back to the original domain. So in our case, I would have to copy this right here, change this to the dark cloud. And then over here for the subdomain, I'm going to do the same thing, okay? And then that's going to proxy the dark cloud octa.com, the dark cloud octa.com. So what it's doing is, in all of the data that it receives, Evilginx, it looks for anything like this or anything that has those words and replaces them with our fished domain, right? And then also right here, we are looking for the auth tokens. So the auth tokens are going to have a domain of the original domain. And I'm looking for two ones, particularly for Okta, which is the SID and the Okta state token. Also down here, we have two regexes, and this is for the username and password. So it's going to parse data inside of the request looking for the username and password. So normally like form field data. And then this is the landing page. So this is the page that it normally loads on, right? So if you don't see that when you actually visit this domain, but if I were to actually go to this domain like this, I would get the same login page, right? Because that's the actual full URL. Okay, so let's move over to Evilginx. So Evilginx is already set and running. I have configured Evilginx. I've installed it. There's a whole guide on how to do that. And I have set it up to pretend to be, with that fishlet that I've set up there, I've set it to be okta.thedarkcloud.net. All right, so this is my fake domain. If I go visit that domain right here, I get redirected to Google. If you look right down here, it's an unauthorized request, meaning that essentially I went to visit this site, but I didn't have a key or a token attached to it. So with Evilginx, you can have, or you have to have a token attached to this. So essentially, the URL that you send out is kind of unique, so that if scanners are scanning the internet for just this domain and they go to it, they're just going to get redirected. Exactly.
Nice.
Now you get to set the redirector here. So, and I'm just going to use www.google.com, but you could use anything you want. So now this is going to pop out the full URL that you would put in your phishing email, right?
Can you create like a bunch of those?
Yeah, you can create different ones, but they're kind of specified for that particular session, right? You can change what the unique identifier is and stuff like that.
That's
but there isn't a feature that I know of yet to do like unique ones per user.
That'd be awesome.
Sense, right? Yeah, that could be another feature. Yeah. So anyways, if I type that in here, you'll see that I get to visit and I get a loading page. Now this is a proxy of the real page, right?
Right,
so this
it looks identical.
It looks identical because it really is identical, right? And in fact, the whole time that I interact with this page, including in the JavaScript, it's going to interact on the back end, right? So we're going to go ahead and plug in a real valid login, right? So I've got two here, or I'm going to enter this one. Yes, you guys all get to see the password. I don't care, it will change. It's part of this demo. Okay, so you're going to see, I'm going to press sign in here, and you'll see that we've actually already picked out the username, right? Because in the background, there's been requests made that were actually, in Okta's example, trying to pull my user picture here.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what kind of how I got that, right? So when I press sign in here,
that's cool.
I get an Okta verify, right?
Okay.
Now you see down here,
you got the password.
I got the password, right? Well, the password's kind of useless without this second factor, right? Sure. Which we've all kind of established, like, yes, I can, but you know, now I gotta get the second factor. So I'm gonna send a push notification, and on my phone, I'm gonna go ahead and accept this, okay? So I get one, I just approved it, and now, hopefully, all tokens intercepted.
Nice.
Cool. Now, we got a 404 here because it was trying to redirect.
So you sent a push notification to your phone, right?
Yeah, I sent a push notification to the phone. So that's what the user would be doing.
And
right?
then, so the user would accept that, and then that just basically, like, at that point, grants that cookie that Okta provided your login session as valid now.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And then,
So
so you
that
were able to
now,
intercept that cookie.
and I was. So now if I go to sessions, right, we'll see I have 2 sessions, right? I got my username,
Oh, wow.
I got my secret password, and then I got captured, right? So
Nice.
if I go session and I type in the ID, we get this little JSON blob right
Okay.
here. Okay. Now, what I can do, and I'm going to show you right now. I have that cookie already, but let's go ahead and clear all of my cookies. We'll go to privacy. You actually could do it up there. I just want to make sure that we clear all the history data. Clear now. I'm going to close this. Now I'm going to go to this page, this login page, right? This is the real site. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the cookie editor, which is a plugin. There's a bunch of them. And this one allows you to import as a JSON object, right? All right, so we saved it to the desktop, and now let's go ahead and import this JSON cookie. Save.json. All right, now if we go back over to the page and we refresh this, oh shoot,
I'm
logged in.
And you're logged in. Nice.
I'm logged in, right? Now, this is just all a demo. Okta actually provides a free 30-day trial, so there's nothing here for me to do. But if it was a real company, then we would have a lot of apps, and you'd be able to go from there, so on and so forth, right?
For sure.
So pretty interesting stuff. In this case, I'm the administrator. But yeah, so all I did was capture this data and move it over.
Nice.
Now, you might be thinking, well, what about other sites? Well, you just make fishlets for all the other sites.
And so when you make a fishlet, I mean, is the process basically just, throw your browser through something like Burp and then try to see what cookies are being added, and you just figure out which one's the main session cookie and then kind of write it for that?
Yeah, pretty much. So if we go ahead and look at Burp right here, and oops, there it is. I'm looking for sitemap. So if we look over here, we can actually digest that data really fast. So this is how I built that for this. So what happened is actually when you visit the page, the response you get, this is kind of the blob of data. This is the page as we know it, right? And you can see that this like variable base URL, this is actually JavaScript, right? So I had to go and look, and in my Okta, you can see that I'm looking for that blob and for that original host name and replacing it with what do you call it? The host name for the fish domain, right?
Nice.
So that's what it's doing, right? And so you pretty much walk through all the steps. The other piece that you're doing too is after you get these factors, you're also looking for the cookies that are being sent back and forth, right?
Right.
And the particular case, weirdly enough, for Okta is that it sends data in raw JSON. So I've actually had to set up a parser in Evilginx to parse through that, which I'm pushing actually that up to Evilginx. But anyways, yeah, so that's kind of the whole attack and how you could kind of play it out with
that's awesome,
Evilginx.
Man.
And that's Okta, for example. There's a bunch of other fishlets on the site. So yeah, cool
Sweet,
stuff.
Dude. That's great, man. Like I'm excited to use it.
All right, so I guess to kind of close that out, right? What about on the blue team side? So a lot of this attack chain is reliant on phishing. So we have to get a user or to click on a URL that's not the URL that they would be necessarily anticipating.
So you just need to be able to recognize that they're going to a site that they shouldn't be going to, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, there's different tools and techniques that kind of have been implemented for things like this, DNS blacklisting, or being able to just parse through phishing, parse through emails. I've seen some companies who actually implement whitelist entirely across the organization to pretty much just destroy phishing. So, if you're not on the list of approved domains or specific users, then your email doesn't even appear in their inbox. It goes into a quarantine. So stuff like that, that may be kind of like, a big hammer to this problem. But yeah, so it's another attack vector, but it really does depend on getting someone to click on that URL and just trusting that it's going to work, right? Or trusting that it is the URL that you think. Another thing, and this is further looking out, is looking to use more authenticated sessions than session cookies, right? So the session cookie may be unique and cryptographically secure, but if it leaks out, meaning that somebody is in the middle, then game's over. So looking at some other techniques that kind of prevent that from happening.
And then also like session timeouts too. Like you don't want your sessions lasting super long if you're a web developer.
Yeah. So the other thing too, some people might be thinking, is like, well, what about the IP? I'm going to be coming from a different IP and so on. So most sites don't really have a blacklist type interface where you have to log back in after you have the session cookie from a different IP. You could do something like that as well. But there is a way around that, which is the fact that Evilginx actually is the IP address that the server knows of. It doesn't actually know what the user's real IP was in that particular scenario. So I could just proxy my traffic through Evilginx, and that would circumvent that security control if it was in place, right? So there's some of that. Cool. But yeah, resources, Evilginx2, go check it out. He actually wrote a blog post to kind of give you an idea of the fishlets and how they're constructed. Playing around with it. Definitely Burp is going to be your best friend if you're trying to build custom ones.
For sure.
I've built a couple more custom ones for different things. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, Ralph, thanks for coming on, man. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
All right. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. And that's a wrap for episode number 29. And we will hopefully catch you soon. Thanks again.